You wake up tired. You drag yourself through the day, coffee, energy drinks, exercise, 8 hours of sleep. Nothing seems to help. The exhaustion just persists. Doctors say your tests are normal. You start to doubt yourself. Am I just lazy? Is this depression? Am I making it all up? Here's a truth no one tells you. You're not imagining it. You're not sick. Your mind is stealing your vital energy. And Eckhart Tolle knows exactly how it's happening. What I'm about to reveal will explain why millions of people live in a permanent state of exhaustion that no amount of rest seems to cure. And more importantly, it'll show you how to reclaim an energy you didn't even know you'd lost. But first, let me ask you a question. How many thoughts have you had in the last 5 minutes? Not the thoughts you wanted to have, the thoughts that just appeared. The automatic judgments, the worries about the future, the rehashing of the past. If you're honest, you'll realize your mind never stops. It's running 24/7. And every single thought. It consumes energy, literally. Tolle has identified this as the silent epidemic of our time. In a hyper-stimulated world, people are increasingly trapped inside their own heads, stuck in never-ending cycles of thinking, worrying, and self-judgment. And this mental hyperactivity, according to Tolle, is a major source of human suffering. But not just suffering. It's also the primary source of the chronic fatigue that no amount of sleep can fix. Think of your brain like a computer. When you open 50 tabs in your browser, the computer slows down. It overheats and it crashes. You can't get it to work right, and your mind works the same way. Every thought is a tab open. Every worry is a program, running in the background. Every repetitive memory is a file being continuously processed, and all of that consumes resources that should be available for you to live your life. But here's something that will completely change your perspective on tiredness. Research in psychology has identified a phenomenon called ego depletion. The idea, proposed by social psychologist Roy Baumeister, is that self-control and willpower function like a muscle. And like any muscle, they can be overworked to the point of exhaustion. When your mental resources are low, your capacity for self-control becomes compromised. You feel drained, depleted, unable to make even simple decisions. Studies have shown that suppressing emotional responses accelerates this depletion. When you spend the entire day controlling your anger at work, pretending you're okay when you're not, hiding your true emotions, you're using huge amounts of mental energy. And at the end of the day, there's nothing left to say. You're exhausted, but not physically, so mentally. And here's the problem. Most people try to solve mental exhaustion with physical solutions: more sleep, more coffee, more exercise, more vitamins. And none of these things work, and because they don't address the root of the problem. The problem isn't the body. The problem is the mind that never stops. Now pay attention, because what Tolle teaches about this goes against everything you've been taught. Tolle says that when you're really tired, you can actually become more peaceful, more relaxed than in your normal state. Why? Because the thinking is diminishing. And when the thinking diminishes, you can no longer remember your problematic, mind-created self. You simply exist present, without stories, without dramas. And in that state, the energy starts to return. This suggests something profound. The exhaustion doesn't come from doing things. The exhaustion comes from thinking too much about things. You can work physically all day long and still have energy, but if you spend the entire day trapped in obsessive thoughts, you'll end up destroyed, because compulsive thinking is infinitely more tiring than physical work. But wait, there's something even deeper happening here. For those going through a spiritual awakening, the exhaustion can be especially intense, and this confuses a lot of people. We expect enlightenment to energize us. We expect awakening to make us feel alive, vibrant, full of energy. And instead, many people discover they need to sleep for 1,000 years. The reason is simple but powerful. During the awakening, your nervous system, which has been in a state of high alert and possibly for years or decades, finally receives permission to rest. It's been scanning for threats, managing old wounds, keeping you functional while parts of you remained disconnected. And when the awakening begins, that hypervigilant state can finally relax, and the relaxation, after decades of tension, manifests as extreme exhaustion. It's as if you've been running a marathon for years and without realizing it, and now, finally, your body is stopping and settling the score. Many people in this phase make a serious mistake. They fight the exhaustion. They try to push through it. They take more stimulants and they force themselves to be productive. And that only prolongs the cycle, because the body isn't asking for more action. The body is asking for surrender. It's asking you to finally stop fighting and allow the rest that has been denied for so long. Tolle talks about this in a very direct way. He says that resistance to what is creates additional suffering. If your body is exhausted, resisting that exhaustion isn't going to cure it. It's going to make it worse. The healing comes from accepting the current state, from stopping the fight, from allowing the body to do what it needs to do, which in this case is rest deeply. That doesn't mean you need to stop living, but it means you need to change your relationship with the exhaustion. Instead of seeing it as a problem to be solved, see it as a message to be heard. Your body is telling you something, and if you stop fighting long enough to listen, you'll discover what it is. The science of the stress response confirms this. Hans Selye, a pioneer in stress research, identified a phase called the exhaustion phase. It occurs when the hyperactivity of the HPA axis, which regulates the stress response, finally diminishes. The adrenal glands, which were working in overdrive, enter a hypoactive mode, and the result is profound fatigue. If you activate your adrenal glands repeatedly, without sufficient recovery between episodes, your body becomes depleted. You become susceptible to illness, and because the immune system is weakened, and the fatigue becomes chronic. Not because something is wrong with you, but because your body is finally doing what it should have done long ago: resting. It's fascinating to observe that this cycle of chronic stress and subsequent burnout, it's actually been identified in studies about Kundalini awakenings. Researchers have noted that a hyperactivated sympathetic nervous system, which is persistent in Kundalini awakenings, can cause the same kind of damage to the body as prolonged and excessive stress. Extreme exhaustion and muscle aches are often reported as common symptoms during these processes. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that exhaustion during a spiritual awakening isn't weakness. It's not a lack of willpower. It's not laziness. It's a legitimate biological response to an intense process happening in your nervous system. Your body is recalibrating itself, and recalibration requires energy. And one of the most profound forms of self-care you can practice is to honor that need for rest, instead of fighting against it. Some people report that this exhaustion comes in waves. There are days of relatively normal energy, followed by periods of overwhelming fatigue. This is completely normal. Awakening isn't linear. It happens in layers, and each layer that gets processed can bring its own phase of exhaustion. Over time, as more layers are integrated, energy starts to stabilize. But this is a process that cannot be rushed. Remember when I mentioned that your mind works like a computer with 50 tabs open? Here's the continuation of that metaphor. Eckhart Tolle talks about something he calls the inner body. Not the physical body, but the energy field that permeates and sustains the physical body. This inner body, according to Tolle, is vibrantly alive and full of untapped energy. By simply connecting to your inner body, your felt sense of being alive, you begin to access and release that energy into your system. This means the energy you're looking for isn't coming from the outside. It's not coming from coffee, from supplements, from more sleep. The energy comes from within, and the reason you can't access it is because your overactive mind is blocking the channel. Imagine a garden hose. The water is there, ready to flow, but someone stepped on the hose and obstructed it. No matter how much pressure you apply, the water won't pass. Your compulsive mind is the foot on the hose. The energy is there, but it can't flow because incessant thinking creates an obstruction. But here comes the part that really changes everything. Tolle offers a surprisingly simple solution to this exhaustion epidemic. And it doesn't involve doing more, it involves doing less specifically. It involves getting out of your head and into your body, by becoming aware of the body, even in simple ways, like feeling the energy in your hands or feet. You begin to shift your attention from draining thoughts to a state of restful alertness. Over time, this quiet presence will replenish your energy and heal fatigue at its root. This isn't theory, it's practice. And it works, because it directly attacks the cause of exhaustion, not the symptoms. There's an interesting phenomenon that happens when you start practicing this regularly. In the beginning, it might feel like it's not working. You might even feel more tired. This happens because when you stop distracting yourself with thoughts, you finally feel the exhaustion. That's always been there. You're not getting more tired. You're finally realizing how tired you already were. It's a transition phase, and it can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary, because you can't heal something you don't feel. You can't solve a problem you don't see. By becoming aware of the real exhaustion in your body, you can finally begin to heal it. The key is, don't give up during this phase. Many people stop exactly when they're about to have a breakthrough. They think the practice is making things worse, but in reality, the practice is revealing the truth. And the truth, in this case, is that you were far more exhausted than you realized. Let me explain the mechanism behind this. When you direct your attention to the body, you automatically withdraw attention from thoughts. And thoughts without attention lose power. They keep popping up, but you don't engage with them. You observe from afar. And every moment you spend in the body instead of the mind is a moment of recovery. A moment when the hose unkinks a little. A moment when the energy starts to flow again. The beauty of this practice is that you can do it at any moment, while reading this video description, while walking, while eating, while working. Just bring part of your attention to the sensations in your body, the weight of your feet on the floor, the movement of your breath, the feeling in your hands, anything that anchors you in the physical body. It's interesting to note that during spiritual awakenings, many people report energy spikes, followed by sudden crashes, moments of high energy, followed by extreme fatigue. This happens because buried emotions are rising to the surface, and processing those emotions consumes energy. Awakening brings up unconscious material, and dealing with that material is heavy work. Furthermore, many people become more sensitive to the environment during awakening. This increased awareness can lead to mental exhaustion, especially when navigating intense situations or strong emotions. You feel more, you notice more, and that has an energetic cost. There's also a nutritional dimension to this process that few people mention. During periods of intense awakening or transformation, the body can consume resources at much higher rates than normal. Amino acids needed for hormones and neurotransmitters can be required in greater quantities. If your diet doesn't keep up with this demand, exhaustion can intensify. This doesn't mean you need special supplements or complicated diets, but it does mean that during periods of intense transformation, your body may need more care than usual, more rest, more hydration, more nutrients, more kindness to yourself. Another factor that few people consider is the impact of the digital environment on exhaustion. We live in an era of constant stimulation, notifications, social media, news, and messages. Each of these interruptions requires mental processing. Each one consumes energy. And for someone already going through an awakening, this digital overload can be especially draining. Tolle frequently talks about the importance of creating spaces of silence and stillness. Not just external silence, but internal silence. And that becomes almost impossible when we're constantly connected to devices that demand our attention. If you want to recover your energy, consider drastically reducing your exposure to digital noise. even if it's just for a few hours a day. But here's something crucial that I need to tell you. Not all fatigue during awakening is purely spiritual. Your body is still a biological organism, and it can have real medical problems. If the fatigue persists for more than a few weeks or disrupts your daily activities, please consult a healthcare professional. Chronic fatigue can indicate an underlying medical condition. Use all the tools available to you before concluding that you must be having a spiritual awakening, if you're just super tired. That being said, for most people, the unexplained exhaustion has a much simpler and much more controllable cause: the mind that won't stop. You've just discovered why you feel exhausted for no apparent reason. This truth has been ignored because we live in a culture that values thinking above all else. When you click Super Thanks, you support the creation of content that reveals these hidden truths. It's not payment, it's acknowledgement. You've chosen to wake up to reality. Now, let me give you something practical, something you can start using immediately. In the next few minutes, I'm going to guide you through a simple practice that Tolle teaches. It might seem too basic to work, but its simplicity is exactly what makes it powerful. Wherever you are right now, feel your feet. Don't think about your feet. Feel them. Feel the contact with the floor or with your shoes. Feel the energy in them. Now expand that awareness to your legs, then to your torso, to your arms, to your hands. Feel the vital energy in every part of your body. You don't need to do anything with this sensation. Just perceive it, observe it. Be present with it. And as you do this, notice what happens to your thoughts. They don't stop completely, but they lose intensity. They become more distant, less urgent. If you do this for just 1 minute, you'll notice a subtle change in your internal state. There's a little more space, a little more calm. The pressure decreases slightly. Now imagine doing this 10 times a day, 30 times, 100 times, every time you remember, even for a few seconds, to feel your body instead of following your thoughts. Over days and weeks, these moments accumulate. The habit of bodily presence begins to establish itself, and gradually, the exhaustion that seemed permanent begins to subside. Not because you found an external source of energy, but because you stopped wasting the energy you always had. An important note: in the beginning, your mind will resist this practice. It will tell you that you have more important things to do, that this is a waste of time, and that it won't work. This resistance is normal, and in fact, it's a sign that you're on the right track. The compulsive mind doesn't want to lose control. It will fight to keep it. But if you persist, gently, without force, it eventually starts to calm down. This is what Tolle calls disidentification from thought. You're not fighting against the thoughts. You're simply putting your attention elsewhere. And without attention, compulsive thought loses power. The signs that this practice is working are subtle at first. You'll notice moments during the day when you feel inexplicably better, moments of clarity, moments of energy that seem to arise from nothing. And gradually, these moments will become more frequent. Chronic exhaustion begins to lose its grip. Another important sign is that you start to perceive when your mind is entering hyperactive mode. You notice the moment when the thoughts start to accelerate, and that perception gives you a choice. You can continue following the thoughts, or you can bring your attention back to the body. Every time you choose the body, you save energy. It's important to understand that this is not about never thinking. Thinking is useful. Thinking is necessary. The problem isn't thought. The problem is compulsive thinking. The thinking that keeps running even when it serves no purpose. That kind of thinking is a pure waste of energy. There's an analogy that Tolle uses that makes this very clear. He compares the mind to a tool. A hammer is useful when you need to nail something. But if you hold the hammer all day long, your hand will get tired. If you keep hitting everything with the hammer, even when there are no nails, you're going to create problems. The mind is the same, so it's a magnificent tool when used consciously. But when it operates alone, without supervision, it creates chaos, and it consumes energy in enormous quantities. Most people have never learned how to turn off the tool. They've been conditioned to think that the more they think, the better. That productivity means constant mental activity. That mental rest is laziness. And this conditioning is behind the epidemic of exhaustion that we see in the modern world. Tolle makes a distinction between functional and dysfunctional thinking. Functional thinking is when you use the mind to solve a problem, plan something, create something. Dysfunctional thinking is when the mind runs in circles, repeating the same worries, reviewing the same memories, anticipating the same fears. The first type of thinking generates results. The second type just drains. And here's the final irony of this entire situation. The more you try to think your way out of exhaustion, the more exhausted you get. Because the solution isn't in the thinking. The solution is in stopping thinking, at least for a few moments, regularly, throughout the day. Going back to what I said at the beginning about your mind being like a computer with 50 tabs open, the practice of bodily presence is equivalent to closing those tabs, one by one. You don't need to close them all, but each tab you close releases resources. And with resources released, you function better, you think more clearly, and yes, you have more energy. Remember the question I asked at the beginning, about how many thoughts you've had in the last 5 minutes. Now you understand why that question matters. Every unnecessary thought is an energy leak, and over the course of a day, these leaks accumulate. In the end, you're exhausted, not because you did too many things, but because you thought too much. Your job now isn't to fight against the thoughts. Your job is to create spaces of non-thinking, moments of bodily presence, oases of mental silence amidst the noise. And in those spaces, the energy that has always been there, waiting, can finally flow. Because in the end, the energy you seek doesn't need to be created. It already exists, within you, waiting to be released. All you need to do is take your foot off the hose. All you need to do is stop draining yourself with thoughts that don't serve you. And the exhaustion reveals itself as having been a symptom all along. A symptom of a mind that has forgotten how to turn off. And now you know how to remind it. Let me finish with something that Tolle said that captures the essence of all of this. He observed that most people go through their entire lives without ever experiencing what it truly means to be rested. They confuse sleep with rest. But you can sleep 8 hours and wake up feeling completely exhausted. Because true rest doesn't happen when the body stops. It happens when the mind stops. Moments of pure presence are moments of deep rest, even if they only last a few seconds, even if they happen in the middle of a hectic day. Each moment in which you are completely present, without thoughts about the past or the future, is a moment of regeneration. And the more of these moments you accumulate throughout the day, the less burned out you become. The irony is that most people never stop because they think they don't have time. They're too busy. They have too many things to do, and that's exactly why they remain exhausted. Because they never stop long enough to recharge, and without recharging, the battery eventually hits zero. You don't need long meditations. You don't need spiritual retreats. You don't need perfect conditions. You just need a few seconds of presence regularly throughout the day, and those seconds accumulate, and the energy comes back. Not because you did anything special, but because you finally stopped draining it. And that's the silent revolution that Tolle proposes. Not a dramatic change, not a heroic effort, just the simple practice of being present in the body, repeated over time. And from that simplicity emerges something that no stimulant can offer, sustainable energy that comes from within. Now tell me, what time of day does your mind race the most? Is it in the morning, with worries about what's coming? Is it at night, reviewing what's past? Or is it constant, without breaks? Comment down below. I want to know exactly when your energy leaks the most. And be specific. The more details you give, the more clarity you'll have about your own patterns. I'll be responding to all the comments within the first 2 hours. Your experience matters. Your voice matters. I'm here to listen. And together, we'll understand this process of transformation.